Hello, everybody, and welcome to the podcast Nonethelesser. I'm your host, Cody Buchanan. Today we'll be talking with an amazing instrumentalist and visual artist who has made a name for himself using the sounds and sights of Tropicalia to bring listeners to a paradise far, far away. His collage art pairs perfectly with his music, and his vinyls are very limited, selling out nearly as fast as they're announced. And why shouldn't they? With sleeves as beautiful as the music inside, you might feel like I do in that they look like an exotic fruit ready to be taken a bite out of. But that's enough of me. Let's jump into this interview that I've been anticipating for a while now with Ted Feighan, otherwise known as Monster Rally. Ted, I was thrilled to see you willing to meet with me, and I'm excited to have you here today and jump into this interview.
Yeah, of course. I'm happy to be here.
Let's start off by having you introduce yourself and telling everyone what it is you do.
So I guess I would say my name is Ted Feighan, and I make artwork and music. The music's all under the name Monster Rally, and the artwork is sort of either people think Monster Rally or just my name, Ted Feighan, or whatever. And yeah, that's me. I do it all.
Yeah, so that was one of my initial questions, was the artwork is obviously all made by you. And has that always been the case from the beginning?
Yeah, that's always been the case. And I think that that's sort of why they started at the same time, because I was making the music and I needed to make artwork for the album releases. And so I was thinking about, what would reflect the sound and the style of the music. And then along that same exact time, I had started to become interested in some collage art, and the two just sort of like came together at the very beginning and haven't ever separated.
Oh, okay, cool. So the collage art, then, that kind of started before the music then?
A little bit, yeah. And I think it started before this project. Like back in the day, I was doing a lot of like digital, design and vector art, stuff like that. And it was a lot of like digital collage, but it wasn't until I started doing the Monster Rally stuff that I was doing the analog collage. And that was in like 2009, I think.
Okay, and you debuted both in 2010?
Yeah, I think so, exactly. 2000, like I was starting to make the music in 2009, and then I think I had my first EP was like May of 2010.
Uh-huh.
And actually, I guess a couple of those EPs are just like the images are just like found images. I think a handful of them don't even have the artwork, like the MR EP or the Color Sky EP. But by the time I released Coral, which was the first album in January of 2011, that was like from then on, all the stuff had the original collages. Okay,
and so you started doing the art, you started doing the music, you had your first release, and it all kind of just came together. Was it always an interest in the Tropicalia look, like Exotica sound and the artwork?
I think it was. I think the music was always that way. When I started, I was just buying all these albums because I liked the way that they looked, and they were all sort of Exotica and Tropicalia records and anything international. And so when it was time to make the artwork for that music, I was trying to like think of the place and time or whatever that all this stuff exists. Initially, I think what I was more interested in is just being like trippy. But then I think as I sort of got more honed in what the concept was, it sort of became, this world unto itself.
Okay. That's really cool. So you've got your website. Have you always sold the prints too? Or was it you just wanted something to accompany the music and then eventually like people were asking for prints or?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's exactly how it was. Like I wasn't, I had always made artwork, but it was mostly because I was always in bands. And so I was in bands and I would make the artwork for that. And I was always doing that sort of thing. And then in the time in between sort of other bands and starting Monster Rally, I went to school for artwork. And so that's when I got sort of more introduced to doing it as an actual, like, not as a job. I never ever thought I would do it as a job, but as just like a more refined skill. And so, I never really, but it was always secondary. So I never really thought about myself as being like, an artist who was selling my own stuff until like years down the line of making several records, when exactly what you said, people would ask for, they want the album artist prints or whatever, people would offer to buy the originals. And then, from there, I sort of realized like, okay. And along the same time, my interest in it was growing as its own thing. Like I'll make a record and it'll be off and on for like 6 months or so of making it. But throughout the rest of the time, I probably spend 80% of my time making artwork and 20% making music, just because it takes longer.
Yeah. You mentioned not like imagining actually, I guess, selling the artwork and all of that together. Is that, I mean, do you have like a day job now to keep you going by, or are you living off of the music now?
Well, it's a bit of a combination of that. I think just sort of as a rule in Monster Alley from the beginning, my whole point was I am never going to make this about my job. Because before that, in high school and all this sort of stuff, I was in other bands, and my whole, dream was always like, I want to be a touring musician. I want to be a musician like as my job for life. But then I did a bit of that, and I was just like, this actually isn't at all what I was hoping for. And it just seems like a big struggle. And then when you're thinking about this, is it for your job and all this, when it becomes about funding your life, it really makes you make different decisions creatively than you would otherwise. And so whatever, that's how it started. But as things kind of ramped up and I was doing more, like I still don't tour often. And obviously right now I'm not touring at all. But mostly what I was doing was trying to figure out ways to do my own thing that weren't necessarily about Monster Alley and the specific artwork, but had to do with my interests as well. So I think it's almost 6 years ago now, I had started a company just like making art zines for my own stuff and then for some other artists. And that sort of spiraled into doing a lot of other products. And in 2015, my wife had left her job to work with me on this company. And it's what we both do full time now. And so that's called Valley Cruise Press. And we do all types of stuff like artist collaboration on a various amount of projects or products. But right now we mostly make like home goods and apparel and accessories, that kind of stuff.
Oh, that's awesome. Are those products something you can find only through you, or do you?
Yeah,
do you
it's mostly through us. We used to do a lot of wholesale, and that was sort of like the name of the game from like 2016 or 2015, 16, 17. And then we sort of cut all that off because it was just like it was the same sort of way of the, like, I'm not going to do this as my job kind of thing. Cause when it came to be that with the wholesale, it was like, people want to buy, hundreds and thousands of these kinds of items, but they need to be in like this specific category. You know what I mean? And so you wind up making stuff that you weren't that passionate about to begin with. And then when it doesn't do well, you've only got yourself to blame, because how can you be good at something you didn't really care about? And so anyway, the modern version of the company exists like 90% on our like website, and then like a handful of like wholesale accounts.
Okay. You don't have like a storefront, like a physical?
No, it's always been online. And mostly we didn't have the storefront because when we started, we were in LA and it was just sort of too expensive, and we thought we'd have to be there all the time. So we didn't want to do it.
Yeah, that makes sense. You're not out of LA anymore. Are you back in Ohio?
Yeah. About 3 years ago, we moved back to Cleveland, where we're both from.
Did you find that as that became more of your, I guess technically your job, did you find it to be more enjoyable, or did it impact how much it was enjoyed by you in the beginning?
I think, it's a little bit of both. Like in the beginning, like it's definitely my job. I mean, in my day, I'll spend, 75% of my day on Valley Cruise and 25% of it on Monster Alley. And that'll be just divided between like art and music or something, just on the daily level. So as that time job wound up taking more of like my time pie chart, I think sometimes it's less enjoyable, sometimes it's more enjoyable, but regardless, there's more pressure on it. And so like the more pressure there is on any one thing that you're doing, especially when it's ultimately all reliant on you, it makes that feel more real and frustrating and scary, but also more rewarding when it's going well. So I'd say like right now, currently, I think it's like I feel great about it. You know, my wife and I are very, very close. I mean, her and I've been together since high school, and so thinking about like working in any other way than not just the two of us seems crazy to me. So every day, like I'm very thankful about that. But ultimately, it's just stressful when it's just the two of us, and sometimes we have a problem and we look at each other and think like, I don't know, you know. But also on the other end of that, if I say like I'm not doing any work today, I'm going to go make music all day or something, like that's just my choice, you know. And sometimes I do, and when it comes time, like if I'm making a new record or something, I'll block out the week or something and be like, these, you know, 3 days out of this week for like the next month or so, I'm not going to work at all. I'm just going to do music. So there were times I'd say like 2 years ago after we moved to Cleveland in 2018, like that whole year for the business was like just terrible. And every day I was so stressed out, you know, like we didn't have any money, nothing was working. We had 6-month-old twins, and it was just like suddenly we live in Ohio, and, you know, like just terrible times. But I'm ultimately and always glad that I was doing that for me and Kelly and not like at a job, because I would have gotten fired.
Yeah.
There's no chance. I'm a terrible employee. Any job I've ever had, I've been such a bad employee. Well, I'm great for myself, but terrible for other people.
Yeah, I mean, you only have to appeal to one person now, right?
Exactly. And I'm going to appeal to her anyway.
Right.
I mean, I hope so.
Yeah. You made it that far with her, so.
Right. At least nobody will be, you know, as understanding to me and myself than she will, and vice versa, which is why, I mean, some people, you know, you talk to them and they think like working with your spouse, it might just be horrible. They don't know how you do it. But I can't imagine it any other way. That's like my goal really every day, is just like not having to get another job.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, with this obvious climate of the world right now with the pandemic, I worked a lot from home for most of this lockdown, and I was really close with my wife and my daughter, and I loved being able to just turn my chair and see them. So
yeah,
a lot of,
and that's how I feel.
Yeah, a lot of people say they couldn't imagine working from home. They'd need a break from their family, but I don't get that.
Yeah, I think it just depends a bit. Like I'm the very same way. Like our girls are 3 now, and you know, since we've been home working every day, like we have an office. We still have it now, but we haven't been working there since March, and I don't think we'll ever go back, because now that you're not there, especially because it's such a small company, it's me and my wife and a guy who ships for us, and it's like, it's just nice to be home. You see the girls all the time, and like you're working. We used to spend so much money eating lunch out. You know, every we'd be like, we're spending way too much money on lunch. This is just stupid. So then you're back home. You're like, oh, this is amazing. Yeah. And we're lucky that we all get along well, and we're happy about that. I think a lot of people are in this scenario right now, being like, I can't do another goddamn day of this.
Yeah. Yeah. They're definitely out there. I just don't get it. But you've got 2 girls, you said. Are they twins?
They are, yeah, twins. They turned 3 in June.
Oh, awesome! Our daughter just turned 1 yesterday, or 2 days ago.
Congratulations! That's great.
Yeah, thank you. As I mentioned, reaching out to you.
That's a tough time. Like
yeah,
12 months old. Like that's exactly the point I was describing to you in 2018 of just being like the lowest point for me. that was like exactly like they were that age and everything else wasn't working. And like I just think back about it being terrible. But then I also remember all the great stuff.
Yeah. She's actually been like, I mean, we don't have anything to compare to other than what we read and see and hear, but she has been extremely easy on us. Like, she was sleeping through the night at 2 weeks, and she's still doing great. I mean,
that's the biggest thing, honestly, is the sleep. Like, in our girls, they slept through the night from the time they were 3 months old. So, even that's great. You got me beat at 2 weeks. That's incredible. But as long as you're getting that rest at night, you know, like you feel like you can tackle anything in the day. But when the uncertainty coming toward bedtime of like, are they going to sleep or not? Are they going to scream or something? Then you feel like you're going to lose it because there's no, you don't have that guaranteed break.
Right. Yeah. My wife works from home. She's an artist, so she also takes care our daughter while I'm working away from home. So she struggles with naps. Our daughter does. So the naps are the hardest part, where she doesn't get that time during the day. So it's like every moment. And I was a procrastinator before our daughter came along, but
me too. But you can't do it.
It's like once you have a kid, it's like every moment, you got to squeeze as much out of it as you can.
Yeah, especially if you do multiple things. Like I used to be somebody who had such a hard time waking up in the morning. Like I never slept particularly late, but I would always get up and I would it'd take me 20 minutes to get out of bed or something. But since when you have kids, it's just like there's a very real crying child of mine in the other room that I need to go tend to. You can't not get up. And so it's sort of the same thing. It's just like I know that in a half an hour I'm going to have to get back to taking care of my daughter. And so like I have to handle this project now.
Yeah.
Which in a way, actually, I feel like they've made me so much better at doing things and like assigning priority to the things I want to do because of my sort of limited time.
Yeah, exactly. They will definitely teach you about efficiency.
Also, that nap stuff is real. It like they slept through the night so well, but even we've struggled with the naps, and it doesn't go away. Like they're 3 now. Yesterday, my daughter cried through her whole nap, and my other daughter took her diaper off and threw it across the room. And like so now they're taking their diapers off at nap, but they're not potty trained at nap. Potty trained at other times, but not at nap and overnight. And this morning we went in there, and one diaper is across the room. It's got a huge poop in it. And my wife's looking at my daughter being like, what happened? She's like, I threw it. It was poopy. And we're like, you can't just take your poopy diaper off and throw it across the room and then just go back to sleep. But of course, they're 3 years old. So they're just like, I think I can, though. And
just proved it.
Well, yeah, yesterday we were in the car going to my mom's house, and I gave my other daughter, we have these crystals. So I gave her this crystal, and she has a little owl that she carries with her. And then she also wanted to take her sippy cup, and she has a pine cone that she wants to take. And so, I mean, there's like, it's everything, all the most random things that she needs them. And so then she puts them, and she screamed the whole way to my mom's house because they didn't all fit in the cup holder. Oh. And so I'm just trying like different configurations of the crystal, the pine cone, the sippy, the owl, just like which one of these is okay, and none of them were working. I was like, well, maybe you can just like hold one of these things, and then I got them all there, like set up nicely. And then I pull out of the driveway and I just hear the crystal fall out of the cup holder. And I was just like, it's all over.
That's awesome. It's like those memes where they share a picture of their child crying, and it's just like some ridiculous reason.
Yeah, I know. That's exactly what I said to my to my wife last night. I was like, this is like a meme. Like, and it's really around like this time that starts like prime toddlerhood, where it's just like they need something so much to their core. Do they need this thing that you think is ridiculous?
Yeah.
And it's impossible to manage.
Yeah.
Like I can't get that crystal in there with the pine cone.
Yeah. It's like logic is unfound to them.
I mean, I admire that. I would love to just be like, yeah, but can't you just do it anyway? Like
yeah.
Yeah.
It's good salesmanship for sure, because you'll keep working for them.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, nothing's more of a motivator than trying to figure something out for your kids.
Yeah. So back to your artwork. We're going to talk about your music here in a minute, but I did see that your artwork led you to a cool collaboration with Land Yachts.
Yep.
That's really sweet. How did that come about?
They had reached out to me like 5 years ago or so about using some of my music in some of their videos. And I thought that was a cool thing because, I mean, way back in the day, some of the music some of the ways I found out about some of my favorite music was like through like VHS skate tapes, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
they always had the best soundtracks, and you get like the sense that none of that music must have been authorized. Like there is this one, I don't even know what it's from, but at the very end, like before they're rolling the credits, they play this Santana song, and I still listen to this song because of that skate video, and I love it.
Yeah.
And so anyway, it just made me think about that. And so I was like, yeah, of course, that's fine. And their stuff, they always had the really cool visuals because they're based like both in LA and in Vancouver. And so just like, great imagery and all that. And so last year one of the people got in touch with me about they've just been paying attention sort of to the artwork, about doing like collaboration on some skate decks. And I'd always wanted to do some. I'd never done any skate decks before, and so that's sort of how it started.
That's awesome. Does that make you a skater or?
No. I've always this is what I was telling the guy when we started talking. I was like, I gotta let you know right away, like I can't skate. I've always tried to be a skater, and I had a lot of friends who were like very good at it, and I was always just terrible. I've definitely like hurting myself a lot, but I was always sort of around the culture, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I told my wife that when I got this skateboard, I was like, all right, well, now's my chance. I can just like start skating out through our neighborhood. And she was basically just like, no, you can't. Like, you're going to hurt yourself and you can't be out of commission.
Yeah. I mean, you're a dad now, right?
Yeah. I can't be like breaking my leg, and I would most certainly get hurt.
I own, the only longboard I own is actually a Land Yachts, and I love that thing, but I haven't used it since like I was 19 or something.
Yeah, I mean they make great stuff, and even just like the skateboard deck, like as a medium, I think is awesome. Like the dimension of it's cool, just the look of it's cool. Like I don't know, it's just like a classic, classic shape and piece of something that always works well with artwork.
For sure, yeah, I love the pieces that you got in there with them.
Yeah, thank you. I think they turned out really well. It was like this time last year that I was finishing all those graphics. So, I mean, it was a long time that I was just sort of like waiting to share them and to see them myself. So I'm happy to have it out there.
I did mention when I reached out to you that Monster Rally is a big, it's a household name in our household. Listen to it much. My daughter has been listening to it since she was born, basically. Actually discovered you only last year. I think it was or late 2018 maybe, but Spotify gave me the old rewind for last year, and you did end up being my #1 artist. So
that's
kind of gushing.
I love to see that stuff, and I get it too, because with the instrumental stuff, especially like I have so many albums that it's just like you could easily just listen to a band you liked, an instrumental band you liked, for like 6 hours every other day and not even think about it. And like that happens to me all the time. Yeah,
that's exactly what I do. That's probably how you got there, because it's just so easy to turn on and just like focus on whatever or space out or.
Yeah, totally. Well, I'm happy to hear that. And I always love to hear that people say their whole family and especially their kids like this stuff. And it's funny for me because my kids they never hear my music. Like sometimes they do, like they'll hear me making it a little bit, or like I'll, my one daughter really loves owls, and so I did that Sister Owls song that I did as the single like a year ago.
There you go.
And I was like trying to show her the thing and play it for her, and she listened to it, but like they love Daniel Tiger. I don't know if you know who Daniel Tiger is. You'll get there when your daughter's a little older, or maybe you'll get there, but you should. It's a great show. But they're just basically always like, put on Daniel Tiger. Like, no Dada music, we want Daniel Tiger. And I was like, all right, that's fine.
Yeah, I haven't heard of Daniel Tiger, but I know it's all coming. We're rocking the Wiggles right now.
Okay. Yeah, we never really got into the Wiggles though. They really they were into Baby Shark. They liked some Baby Shark, and then you get into like just other random songs that Spotify will direct you to that are kid songs.
Yeah.
But no, nothing like Daniel Tiger. He's like another member of our family.
Okay.
It's a TV show on PBS, so it's not even about the music, although they do have great music, and whoever's like doing it is super talented. But there's like some albums on Spotify, and so they just like to listen to them too.
We'll have to check them out.
Life lessons like crazy. It's gonna be great.
When you're getting into your music, when you're producing a new song, is it more like you dig around for a sound that you're looking to pursue so you can execute the track you have in your mind, or is it more of like you stumble upon a sound while listening to some vinyls and that's when you're like, this is something that I need to evolve into the next thing, like an actual track?
It's a combination of those two things. So sometimes it'll be like I have a concept in mind maybe I've heard something, in particular, like I was listening to some, like South American, like a Peruvian like song or something, and I think like, oh, those kind of like instruments sound really cool. I should find some of that in my collection or whatever. But for the most part, it's really just like I'll have a bunch of records. I'll go through, I'll listen to them, and like just sort of sample along the way. And either if something is like really like going well right after I sample it, it might go right into making a song from there. But a lot of times it winds up just like I'll go through a bunch of records, I'll sample a bunch of stuff, I'll sort of just like jam out a little bit on some ideas, and then I'll just leave and then come back in a few days or something and go through them again on my sampler, and just something of that will come into an actual song.
Okay.
And sometimes I'll just go and listen to a sample for like 25 minutes just on loop and then just be done.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you just listen to something and you're like, you get caught up, and then you're not necessarily in the place to actually finish anything, and then you just go away. Like you're in that loop for 20 minutes and you're done.
Like you mean like there's something there and then you're like, no, there's nothing here, never mind.
Maybe not. Well, maybe not, but you're there, and then maybe like I'll come in to make some music or something, and then I'll just get caught up listening, and then by the time I'm done listening to it, I am not like ready to be doing anything.
Yeah.
But then often I'll come back and do something, or I've come back and tried to use like those same samples and make a song or something after that. And like sometimes I've done it, and other times I've come back like I don't even know why I like this so much.
You said your art, like your business is like 75% of your day, your music is 25%. Is that like an 8-hour day, 10-hour day, like different every day?
I would say, well, it depends a little bit. Like, we'll the morning, like we hang out with the girls till like 10, and then we work. And so really I work from like 10 to 4:30 on Valley Crew stuff. And then sometimes intermixed in there or later after they go to bed is like all the music and artwork stuff.
Okay. And the music, the origins of Monster Rally, you started in 2009. Prior to that, were you always like experimenting with music, and then eventually you just decided this is the sound I'm going for?
Yeah, basically I've been making music since I was in middle school. I'd say like I started to learn how to play guitar, and I took a lot of lessons, and I still play now. But like to this day, I don't know any songs. So people are always like, play Freebird or whatever, and yeah. I'm just like, I never learned any songs.
Yeah,
I tried to, but I was always just trying to make my own. And some were good, some were bad, but it was mostly about just sort of trying to do my own thing. But then I guess it was 3 bands between middle school and doing Monster Rally. And that was like punk bands and screamo bands, basically. And then when that sort of stopped right around like college time for me is when I started going deeper into what I do now. And I think I started doing the Monster Rally stuff, and the concept had just sort of like worked so well for me, and I haven't been able to shake it since, really. But the concepts I have for my own music are pretty consistent.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, my take on like where your music debuts and where it is now, it's like it almost kind of went from really kind of clean, crisp cuts, and it's almost like more straightforward in the beginning, but then eventually it gets into more of like a hazy, kind of dreamlike sound where you're at now, that I interpret at least, and it's still somehow cleaner despite being like kind of hazy, dreamlike.
Yeah, I think that's actually a pretty good explanation. It's hard for me to say because I think about, I don't know, it's just tough for me to think about the actual stuff.
This is one of Monster Rally's earliest examples, called Chaska Beach, from his EP Deep Sea, which came out in 2011. The cuts to his samples are a lot more straightforward, and the layers are a little easier to pick apart than his newer work. Consider all that when comparing to his latest release, his single, Green Magic. Using harder cuts is certainly a method to the hip-hop instrumental genre, but the latest sound in Monster Rally lends itself more to the Tropicalia rather than the hip-hop.
I often go back if I'm making a record and think like, oh, I wanted to like sound how it sounded in 2012 or something, and I think I still don't know anything about like mixing or sound production or anything like that. I'm terrible about it. I go to play shows or something, and I'm always, if I have a problem with my sound equipment, I'm always just like, I don't know, like I'm calling my buddy who's really good at it. And I'm just like, this guy wants a whatever cable or something. But just because of doing it so much, I inadvertently just got better at making it sound better, Yeah. And so I'm always like trying to fight against that. Because it's a fine line between making it sound like things too clean, or like making them sound like they're forced to sound like they're old. I'd never do this, but a couple years ago, I got linked to one of my albums on YouTube. And so I was just like reading some of the comments, and which I love to do, but you should never do. Like, I like to read YouTube comments on other songs. Like, especially if you like anything, like the past 2 years or so, I've gotten really into Steely Dan, which is a really funny thing, but I love Steely Dan. And if you go and just read the comments on some of these YouTube things, it's just like everybody geeking out about how much they love it, Yeah. And then just like somebody on there being like, well, this is horrible and should be deleted, Yeah. So anyway, whatever. I was on my one of mine, and like most people are supportive. And some people are like, this is garbage, this guy should stop making music or something. And then the one below it was like, I can't handle all this fake vinyl texture sound. Like, this is so lame or whatever. This should be, like, it's terrible. But, and I'm the one reading it being like, I've never put a vinyl texture sound on anything. Like, it's all just coming from there.
Yeah.
But I don't know. So there's no way to control, like, what level of that necessarily comes out. And if you're somebody who really likes that sort of sound and texture, like I do, you tend to go a little crazy on it.
Yeah, I mean, I would never claim to be like proficient in picking apart music and its layers, but I do feel like vinyl textures are pretty easy to tell whether they're natural or if they're an added effect. But I mean, there's nothing really wrong with it either way. It's just, I don't detect that when I listen to Monster Rally. It sounds like it's part of your samples.
Right. Yeah, and so, I think like and even like, I don't know, I like those weird effects too. And a couple of my samplers have like a vinyl simulator kind of thing, which I don't know, I think that sounds cool too. I like those effects. But yeah, I think that those kind of things are more obvious to hear, but it's just that most people in modern stuff, you don't hear it that much. But if you're used to listening to a lot of beat makers now who sample directly from vinyl, or even some of the stuff from like the early 90s or whatever, like that's the kind of sound, Yeah.
You were talking about the YouTube comments that you read, and I actually read some too on one of your live sets, and one that said,
big nose.
No, I didn't see that one. But one said, this guy seriously has a lot of talent, totally unrecognized. And another one says, a timing maestro and sampling extraordinaire. And another one said, one of the most unrecognized musical geniuses of our day. How does that feel hearing that?
Well, I mean, it's always nice to hear stuff like that. But yeah, I don't know. I think that's great. I'm happy those people are listening and they feel that way. And there are people, that I feel that way about. It's hard when there's something that you really like that you feel like isn't recognized by other people. And at the risk of sounding whatever, I've been doing this for like 10 years or so. And I hear that from a lot of people. And but it's still like hard for me to break past where I am, Yeah. But I also, I'm at where I'm at, and I'm happy there. And the truth is, if I wanted to do more, I could. If I wanted to try to get a bunch of people featured on my thing, because instrumental music is hard, so you need vocals. So you got to get some people on there, and then you need to be out like touring a lot and try to get up on shows with all these other people. And I'm just much more interested in being home. I've never liked to be out like that.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm happy that anybody's listening. I'm happy that those people are psyched and think that the music is great. And that's great. That's enough. It's more than enough.
I mean, when it comes to kind of like the hip hop instrumentals, it's often pretty narrow. Like a lot of artists are just doing like lo-fi, or they're not. And that's about it. I mean, there's definitely some uniqueness to different artists. They have their sound, but you can mash them up in a playlist and you can't really be sure of who you're listening to. But like with your music, I think you've defined something. You clearly have like a sound that you went for. Tropicalia, it makes sense. And here you are with the sound that I haven't heard anywhere else, at least. The hip hop with Exotica. Is that where you always wanted to be, and is that where you think you'll always stay, or do you see yourself branching out to a new sound or genre?
I think a couple thoughts on that I feel sort of the same way about a lot of the sort of beat scene. And I had a friend last year who was hanging out with me and said something like, why aren't you on any of these like YouTube or Spotify playlists of just like lo-fi beats? You know what I mean? And I was like, I don't know, I'd love to be. I obviously can't control that. They have tremendous amounts of listeners. But then he was just sort of like, it's actually a good thing I think you're not, because all that stuff, you could just be listening to anybody. There's no way to differentiate anyone. And then he said something like, I'll listen to those things and then I'll stop and I'll just be like, music is supposed to be enjoyed, not just tolerated. Like you listen to that stuff and it's an hour and a half later and you're like, yeah, all that music was fine.
Yeah.
So that's not to say anything, good or bad about that. Like I love that kind of lo-fi beat stuff.
Right.
But it's hard to stand out when you're doing instrumental music, especially. And so I think a lot of people listen to it and think, whatever, they have a hard time differentiating people unless you're like deep in the thing. But I think, yeah, the concept, about Monster Alley, I think initially I thought I would be doing maybe some other stuff, but as time went on, I think Monster Alley itself is sort of the cornerstones of it are Exotica and Tropicalia and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And uniquely for myself, just about like creating these sort of familiar and exotic, non-specific places that the records take place in,
Yeah.
So I think while I like have interest in doing some other stuff and other types of music and all that, I don't think it'll be as Monster Rally, because it seems wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it
like
would,
even I have some tracks that I've left, like a lot of tracks that I've left off albums because I was just like, I don't think this is in the vein of what the project is about,
Mm-hmm. Do you see yourself releasing those under another name at some point, or?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I always do. I think I probably have like 5 or 6 aliases that I've made music under that some has been released, some hasn't, So yeah. I'm always like thinking about that. And I have like a handful of projects. Hopefully some will come out or not. The problem is none of them ever take as much priority as Monster Alley.
Right.
So like a few years ago, I had an EP come out that I did under the name Shah Marg. I don't know if you've seen that, and it's like heavy guitar work, sort of like psychedelia stuff, but also like with some sampled drums. So it's like you listen to it, I think you'd probably be able to tell that it was me, but it's different enough that it's not Monster Alley.
I was certainly fascinated to find how comparable Monster Rally and Shah Marg were, despite being discernible from each other still. I haven't listened to it. I haven't really had a chance to go through any of your other aliases. Can you drop the names?
So that's the only one that's been released. And then I have a record of just like a bunch of, that's sort of like that, of just me playing guitar with like some drums and percussion and stuff that is unreleased, but that some people have licensed for some like TV and stuff. And then I have another album I'm working on right now that's sort of like a, like a surf rocky kind of thing. So we'll see. I mean, I don't have anything like concrete enough, and nobody can find it yet. So
yeah,
hopefully, but I mean, it's always been the plan. Like a year and a half ago, I was like several songs into recording that surfy album, and then I just like haven't done anything else with it.
That's cool. That sound is kind of coming back, or at least like the guitar element
never
of it
went away.
Yeah, but it's like getting heavy again.
It is getting heavy. I think it's a funny thing that's happening now. I think there's like a new resurgence of like psychedelic surfy rock music, and with the international influence too. Like that stuff has been happening for a while, but it's now that like some of those bands and new ones are coming that are getting like a lot of recognition.
Yeah, there's a lot of people using it for the way it was intended, but they're getting really creative and making it kind of like a darker like atmosphere using that. Like,
well, it's sort of like Tame Impala or something is a great example. Like exactly that. Just like exactly, it's just like a modern step away from like the classic era of that stuff. Okay,
yeah. There's an artist. He's a smaller artist. I don't know if you heard of Jerk.
No.
It's like Jerk, like jerk, and then Curb, Curb, and his music is a lot more dark and vast atmosphere feeling. It's kind of got like that surf sound element, but it's not like you wouldn't want to surf to it.
Right. Yeah, and I think like I love that, and that's exactly like that's how my setup is in my studio with this stuff. Is I just have like a slide guitar and a guitar with a couple of pedals, and then just some like hand percussion instruments, and that's like how it all goes. Yeah, I don't know. Like I love that sort of stuff, and it can be really as simple as you want. Like when I started doing that project, it was about doing like I wanted to do like a beat tape kind of thing where there's like 25 tracks that are like a minute, but just as a like a lo-fi surf band. So that's like really that cool. Kind of concept, but as this. So we'll see. I mean, I think it will come out sometime. It's hard to say. Like we said 20 minutes ago about your priorities with your kids and your creative pursuits. It's just like my windows are smaller now. So if I have an hour, then like just based on my life and my interests and what I think is important, that time has to go to Monster Alley.
Absolutely. When it comes to Monster Alley and all of your sounds, obviously a lot of it is sampling. Do you use a lot of like your own percussion kits, or is it analog, digital, physical instruments?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. It's mostly sample direct, both like sample melody loops and some drum loops, and then some sampled analog drums, and then a lot of just like hand percussion that I'll play live. So there'll be like the song, and then over top of it I'll play like 4 or 5 different percussion tracks, and I'll play like a lot of the bass on the record too.
Okay, nice. And when it comes to like a live set, the only one I've seen you're using a wave sampler.
Right.
Do you typically use a wave sampler, or have you ever done like a vinyl, like spinning records?
Yeah, so mostly like if I'm doing just like a live show, my setup is very simple. I have 2 samplers, and then I sort of live trigger everything for the songs on either side. And so if there's like something that's looped throughout the song, it goes on one side of a sampler, and then if there's anything I'm live triggering, it's going to be on the other one, and then I switch it for every song.
Okay.
And then if I'm just going to play some records or whatever, then that would be like under a DJ set or something, and I would mostly just like play a bunch of different stuff or whatever. And I've done a handful of that, but most live shows are just like me and the samplers. And then I also have a handful of like projections that go along with the sets.
Okay, like visual.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
yeah,
awesome.
There's always a big visual component.
That's really cool.
Yeah, so I think the live video you're probably referring to is the one that was like it was a radio session.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun actually, but it isn't necessarily really true to the live show.
Yeah, I mean, there wasn't a crowd there, right? So
No, well, there was a small crowd actually. I can picture it in my mind now. There was like maybe 10 people, and
okay.
but yeah, yeah, that was a lot of fun. That was I think it's San Luis Obispo at University of California.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That was a cool set. There's a song in there in particular that I can't find. I don't even.
I bet
I
I
don't
can
think it
help
was
you.
identified.
It probably wasn't. And is it the one? It's like, well, you'll have to tell me what it is, but I think maybe it's like an Indian sample, and the drum beat is like, it's almost like a surf drum beat.
It's like let me.
And it's like,
see.
that one. We'll have to see. You can tell me. I'll help you find it, because there's one song on there in that set that a few people have asked me about. But also, I played others that aren't involved in this, so maybe it's not. But
I think it was later in the set, like maybe midway. Let me look here.
But there's a song that is at the second half of the Flight to the Jungle single. But if you don't listen to the whole thing, you won't get there because it's at the very end.
Are you on that video? Because I'm at 16 minutes and 53 seconds. That's the song.
16 minutes and 53 seconds. All right, let me find it. 16:53. Let's see.
Somebody was diligent enough to put all of the song names in there, but that's
people
one that they did
are
not
just
know.
incredible.
I gave him a like. He deserved it.
So we go through some of these comments. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. Oh, okay. I got it. Yeah, 16:53 into like the whole minute of 17, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So this is a song called "Coasting." That is. So there's a handful of these, and people would probably be like pretty thrown off if they heard them and didn't know, because they don't show up on my Spotify because they're on a collaborative record I did with my friend who goes by the name Rumtum. Just search Monster Rally and Rumtum, Rumtum.
Yeah, I've seen the vinyl.
You've seen the vinyl. It has
one.
like the helmet with the antlers.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's on Coasting. That song is called Coasting.
Oh, wait, maybe this isn't the vinyl then. I'm looking at the Monster Rally and Rumtum vinyl on your website.
Okay, right. So that's I have copies of that one. That's why it's on there. Like, there's only a couple of random records on my website. This was a EP that I did in 2012 with my buddy John, and it's half the EP. There's 6 or 7 songs, I think, and then the other half was all etched. Like, it was this artwork etched into the EP. It was awesome. But we did a small run and we never reprinted them. So you probably haven't seen the vinyl.
Ah, what a shame.
I know. I'd love to do it now. And people ask all the time, like, that's some of my favorite. That dude's like my best friend, so it's easier to say. But that's like that's some of my favorite music I've ever done. And it's frustrating because it doesn't show up. I got to get that fixed on Spotify, because it's like 2 other albums right there that you never even know about. And then there's also the Monster Rally and Jay Stone album. Do you know that one?
Yeah, I was going to mention the other collaborations, like with Jay Stone.
Yeah, so that's another one that doesn't show up either, but at least it's there. So
the videos, the music that's all sick. Jay Stone, never heard of him before listening to you, but he has some sick bars.
He does. He's super talented, and he just did an album of his own that came out, I think, last year, maybe like 16 months ago or so, on Gold Robot. It's the same people who do mine.
Yeah.
And that's also super good.
Yeah, that's really cool. I got to listen to more of him for sure, and more of Rumtum too.
Yeah, and so John from Rumtum, he's talk about somebody underappreciated. The dude, he's so talented. And him and I met in Columbus, and it turns out that we're both from Cleveland. And we had both been playing in like different sort of like emo bands in high school, but we played shows together, but had never met. And then in Columbus, when we were both living down there, that's when I started doing Monster Rally and played a few shows, and he was at them, and he had a similar project, and we just sort of connected there. And I mean, we're still such good friends now. He was in my wedding and all of that. but he makes his music is so good. He's so talented, and he's also a visual artist too. He does these like insane murals. Anyway, look him up. But he's got a new album coming out, I think this month, on Bastard Jazz Records. They're out of Brooklyn. Anyway, it's a big deal. I'm psyched for him.
That's really cool. So he's an artist as well. You said what medium?
Painting, mostly. Painting, drawing.
Do you guys collaborate?
We actually have never made artwork together, which I think is kind of crazy. We've talked about doing a few things, but we've never actually done it.
You guys should do that for a vinyl you guys collaborate on, and then make sure I'm at the front of the line to buy one.
Him and I have talked about it so many times, actually, about because we did an album in 2012. We did one in 2013, and then we haven't done anything since. And I'm always like, we just need to do another album. And that way now, because his artwork has really sort of taken off in the past 7 years. So it's like perfect time to do it together and collaborate sort of on all fronts on this piece of music. So hopefully we'll be doing that. What I call him.
How does it feel to know that all your vinyls sell out seemingly as quick as they're released and people like me can't find them anywhere?
It feels great. I think, it's not like, I don't know, maybe I have a low bar for myself or I'm just easily impressed, but it's not like it's so many records. Like we'll do a run, the biggest run of vinyl we do is like 1,000 or something, but they will sell it quickly. So, I mean, I'm always just like shocked at the number of people, like people will order 2 or 3 or something, or they'll get like 2 of each version, Yeah. And I mean, I don't know. I love it. I think it's great. I'm always like very flattered, but, the music now, this sort of far into the project, it's for them, like it's for those people who are just psyched. I want, of course, new listeners and to be doing more stuff, but it's like I said about just being like happy with where it's at. There's a huge number of people who just have been supporting me and are excited about new releases, and so everything I'm doing is just like with those people in mind and in hopes that they continue to tell their friends.
Well, it's really cool, and obviously people snatch it up quick.
Yeah, I think making the artwork and the actual packaging of the records is like equal in enjoyment to me than making the record. You know what I mean? Making the actual music.
Yeah.
So I'm always like thrilled about them, and the product and the packaging and the design and the artwork and everything of the record is as important to me as the music. Yeah,
I mean, all the pictures are, they're just like beautiful like packages for sure. Like you got the colored vinyls that really just pop with the covers.
Yeah, thank you. And actually, I should mention that it hasn't been announced yet, but it will be announced on Friday, that there is I have a double LP coming out at the end of the month. It's a compilation album, actually, in a sense. It's 4 EPs of mine from the past 10 years that have never been on vinyl, plus 5 bonus tracks on this double LP.
Whoa.
And on Friday, awesome. We're going to announce it with a new single, an unreleased single from one of these bonus tracks or whatever.
And when do pre-orders open up?
Friday. So you can't miss out, but you won't need one. Just give me your address after we talk, and I'll send you one.
Oh,
but
shit.
I just got these records 2 days ago, and it's my favorite one I've ever done, and I'm so excited about I was so excited about seeing them in person, just because like the vinyl color combinations, and it's a gatefold, and so like the interior is all crazy, and I don't know, it's a beautiful thing. I'm so excited about it.
I'm excited for you. That's awesome.
But yeah, it'll be Friday. The album is called Castaways Volume 1, and it's just some of my most popular releases, like for streaming anyway, are from EPs that were never on vinyl. So this is like the first time it'll be there, which I think will be exciting.
That's sweet, man. That's really cool. Does so you just had your latest release though was Escape to the Cloud Forest.
Yeah.
Is that going to stay as a single, or are you planning to push that into an album later on?
I think that'll stay as a single.
Okay. I mean, the 2 tracks work so well together, so I don't know how they would work on an album, but
yeah, thank you. I think that actually that was basically the thing. It's like I have Flight to the Jungle sort of the same way, where it's just like, it's not an album, it's not an EP, but this is just like a collection of things that are together that are not to be separated. Or I don't know if that makes sense, but they don't belong anywhere else. I think that if people were looking for vinyl of that, then I would expect maybe that's like a Castaways Volume 2. You know, that's the idea, is that if we do another one, it'll get the rest of the EPs. Because the ones on the record are Flight to the Jungle, Sunflower EP, Psychic, and Starlight, I think. And so there are some others like Escape to the Cloud Forest, or a handful of other ones that are still yet to be on vinyl. So if this one, hopefully if people buy it and they like it, then, you know, next year or sometime we'll be looking at doing the second volume.
Yeah, that'd be really sweet to get those all in one spot.
Yeah, and I mean, I love compilation albums. Like, so much of the stuff of bands that I got into back in the day were just like from finding like there's that Neil Young record, Decade, that is like about just like it's a Neil Young compilation record released in like 1978 of just like a decade of Neil Young, of just like the best time. And that's like what got me into all of his music. So I don't know, I think that stuff's kind of cool, like a bunch of music together from different times.
And obviously people are like flocking towards vinyl again, like they just love the physical element of that.
And I think it's a much more involved way of listening. And I think especially more people are into it because of the passive nature of listening, you know, in modern day. Yeah. Because you can just listen to anything, you put it on or whatever. It's just all accessible. You skip it in 1 minute, you're listening to this band, and then next it just takes you somewhere else totally. And sometimes that's great. But having to like flip through and feel and choose and put on, you know, a side of a record at least, is like an amount of time that is almost unimaginable in like the modern release of music.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We don't have too many vinyls in our house. We probably have like 40, but whenever we put on a vinyl, it's just like you listen through the whole thing, you flip it, and you listen through the B-side, and that's the difference between like, I love Spotify. It's connected me with so many amazing
me too.
artists and musicians. Vinyl is just so different because it's like you are there for the project, the story, whatever it is.
Yeah, you're there for the album. And I think this is like a good and a bad thing, has been a good and a bad thing for my music, is that I've always been about the whole album. And at least the way I was always thinking about the records was like two albums, basically, A side or B side. You just like start on either one or whatever, and at least you have two sections of something. But most people, they're all about, it's all about the single. You want a single or whatever. And my stuff isn't necessarily conducive to just a single, you know. Right. You want to try to get a feel of like several of these things, because one of my songs is just like 1 minute of an idea of a vibe or something, but it's really about its place in the whole thing. And so like that's good for people who are going to listen. It's rewarding, but for people who might not be as familiar with that, it's a lot to ask, you know, because I always say this to my wife every time I have a record, or I'm like trying to get somebody to write about it or something. It's so hard for me to be like, give me 45 minutes of your time.
Yeah.
Because like, nobody does it, you know, and I don't blame them.
Right. But yeah, so, I mean, on the topic of vinyls, for what you sample from, is it all from vinyl? It's
all from vinyl. Yeah. I think maybe in the whole time I've been making the project, I've maybe sampled like one time from my computer.
And the vinyl then that you own, in grams, how many do you have? I'm just kidding. God. How many vinyls do you actually have?
Oh, I don't know. I would say the problem is honestly like so many of them I could get rid of. Like when I go buy things, I almost always buy dollar bin. So like I'll go like $50 or something at the record store, and you come back with, 50 records, obviously, and that's amazing. You know, like for me, it's all about just the random forgotten gems or whatever. So, I mean, but I rarely ever get rid of anything. I mean, I probably have like 5,000 in my basement or something.
Yeah, I need to.
You can come to my house and pick some up, because. But then the problem is that like right now, I'm usually, it's like a weekly thing. I'm out at the record store and I'm buying stuff. I'm taking through. I'm buying stuff, whatever, bringing it home, making music. I haven't been to a record store since February. So anywhere like that. And another area where it's really been a problem for me is that I buy most of my books for artwork at library book sales, and some other handful of places like that. But like I haven't been to one of those since February. So for me, the fact that I haven't gotten rid of any of my records, like I've been going back through and sampling things from records from 5 or 6 years ago that I didn't know. Like at the time, I listened to the record, I was not interested, but now I've come back and I've put it on and I've sampled some stuff and made some music recently from purchases I've made so long ago. So not getting rid of anything has actually been benefiting me at the time when I can't go out.
Yeah. It's certainly created a need to be frugal for all of us, so it's got you digging pretty deep then.
Yeah, and I think that actually the whole thing about the project has been about restriction. So it's not that I'm against sampling from your computer, from Spotify, or from whatever. It's just that that's just limitless. So for me to try to figure out, like, how can I make this project be what it is in the concepts I have, is just about limiting yourself to things. So like it's all vinyl sample or live recorded for myself, and I'm using just these samplers. Like I don't use Ableton or anything to produce the music. So it's just like there's a handful of stuff like that, and that combination of physical things combined with whatever I'm bringing to it makes that what it is.
I think that the unlimited opportunity and potential of like sampling from your computer almost makes it more challenging. And obviously working from a limited, panel in front of you, that's challenging in its own ways, but like being overwhelmed by all of your options.
It's crazy. Like I know people, it's just, if you're going to tinker with something nonstop, like you're going to go nuts. People in there and they're going to play you a drum loop or something, and then they're going to go through the 500 snares they have on their Ableton.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's just like, that'll drive you nuts. And it's not even a critique. Like if I was going to do that too, I'd never be able to decide. You know what I mean? Because it's just like you get in there and then you just think, well, what's on the next one, or what's this one, or what's that one? And it's like having a handful of restrictions on yourself, which are not always easy to maintain, really helps you sort of get some things done.
I've dabbled in music making over the years. I played in a band in high school, and I think like when I started to try to do like laptop production, that's when it was like I felt like it was something I could do, but it was also like just so overwhelming for me that it like I probably have like 900 work in progresses with like nothing to show for it.
Yeah,
and it's just because of how overwhelming the options are in front of you.
Yeah, and I think that's the case for so many people, and even some of the best people are that way. And that's what gets me a little bit. Is like I talked a lot about my buddy John from Rumtum, and hopefully he doesn't think I'm just talking smack about him and the whole thing. This is all good promotion for you. But he will send me the most fantastic album. 13 songs, all amazingly done. Like I'll listen to it and I'll text him after and be like, this is the best yet. It's so good. A couple months go by or something, and I'll just be like, when's the album coming out? And he'll always just be like, no, I don't know. I'm just on to this other thing now. And I want to feel like you are driving me nuts. Because for people, whether you're just deciding on one of 1,000 snares or one of 15 records you're going to make this year or something, it's too, like, if your horizons are too wide with your project, you may find yourself not releasing anything.
Yeah, absolutely.
I may have the opposite problem. Like I'll record something that I think is a demo, and I'll just be like, this took me 5 minutes, but the vibe was right, and then I'll come back and fix it or whatever, and then just like time to make the record, and I'll just like throw it on there and it's fine. Like that's how like half my stuff is, and because of it, a lot of it is a mess. But I don't know, at least it's there.
Anything that anything that I've listened of yours, it definitely feels complete. It doesn't feel like, like there wasn't any hesitation on what you were producing.
I have the benefit of having an incomplete sounding finished product. So whether it's complete or not, like that, that's the Monster Alley vibe for some of the stuff. It's just, it's not super advanced. So roughness is acceptable.
Yeah, and I think that goes with a lot of like sampling hip hop.
Exactly, and for me, like I like that, and like there are even parts in songs where I'll go back and listen to my own, and then I'll hear something, and there's just like a mess up on like the drum break, and I just like cut the sample and then start over again. And maybe other people aren't necessarily thinking about it, but I always think about it, and in my mind, I can play it in my head of just being like, and that's where I just totally messed it all up, and then came back.
Yeah. Speaking on the subject of actually creating your music and like revisiting it, like when you get in a creative rut, like, how do you get out of it? And can you like listen to older music of yours and tell like, yeah, this is when this song was challenging me, and you like remember the process of getting through it?
I try to do that, but then I wind up in a situation where I think like I try to go back and make something sound how it did before, and I can never get there, and then it's just sort of frustrating. I think my only thing of ways about, because this happened to me when I made the last record, that I made music for like 6 months and didn't like any of it and didn't put any of it on the record and was feeling like very down. But I think that basically I just had to like not fight my ideas. And so if I was making something or feeling compelled to make something and I was having whatever feeling about it, I was just thinking like, well, just, follow through with whatever is compelling you right now, and then worry about it later. If it winds up being nothing, that's fine. That's just like still the path you had to go through to get to the other one. But sometimes that'll drive you nuts.
And like, as far as outside influences, other musicians and like maybe even books, movies, whatever media you consume, how does that influence what you produce?
I think like the biggest influence for me about anything in like sort of media is just like nature programming.
Yeah.
Which is kind of a funny thing, but like that's like all my wife and I ever watch is just like nature documentaries or like nature programming or something.
Yeah.
And so like, I'm just like looking at places and animals and plants and that kind of thing is just is huge for me. And then otherwise, I mean, I'm always listening to music, and it's stuff that you might necessarily like, you're not necessarily going to see the influence of it in my music, but just the feeling of just like you listen to something and just like being so psyched on it just gets you hyped to create something, whether it's related at all to it. It just makes you want to do your own thing. And then that own thing winds up being based on the materials you provided for yourself, whether that's, a sampler or your guitar or something.
Right. And do you have any books that you take any influence from?
Not really. Not like, I mean, mostly most of the books that I'm ever looking in are like to cut up to make artwork. But that in itself has its own sort of inspiration, like that's a lot of that stuff is sort of nature related too. So it's kind of like the same thing as the documentary is in the films, of just like being inspired by that. This is a shameful thing to say, but I never ever read. My wife is like an avid reader. She's crazy. She loves books. She's reading all the time. And I think it drives her nuts. I never ever read anything.
I mean, yeah, some people.
I respect it. I've always wanted to be like that person who's a great reader and all that, like who loves books, but I just don't.
Yeah.
Like I never read anything for school. I'd always just like make it up or read what I had to, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like the last book I think I really read was Harry Potter. Actually, I did read it. I read a biography on Brian Wilson like 10 years ago.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah. So it's a bit shameful. I don't know why it's so shameful, but I'm not a reader.
That's fine. I mean, you have plenty of other ways to consume what you need. So
yeah. Well, what I always tell my wife too is that like she takes that time. She takes 2 hours a night or something. She's going to read. It's her leisurely time. But for me, that 2 hours again is like there's your window. So where's your window? Where's your time?
Yeah, it's true. I feel like I love to read, but like I can't find the time anymore because I'm always trying to use my windows for other things. So right. I get that. And so where does the influence on the tropical look and sound come from?
I think initially it came from just an interest back in the day when I first was sort of collecting these records before I ever even sampled anything. I think it was just sort of an interest in the imagery. And so I was always really drawn to, those old Exotica covers. They're just like, they're almost like silly kind of how they are. It's always like some beautiful woman like behind some bamboo, and just like, I don't know. It's a little, but it's, I don't know, captivating anyway. And I think that when I was starting to make the music, I was in Columbus, Ohio. And I think it was probably like wintertime. And I was at that time just like, I think very anxious. So listening to those records and starting the project was sort of a way for me to go to a place that felt better. And that just happened to be this like imaginary tropical land.
Yeah.
So that was like the beginning, and it felt good, you know. And so I think that I was always just like eager to get back there.
I feel like your music is obviously very easy to just like chill to, and it has a very happy sound to it, but you're pulling from vinyls that are from a time and a place that none of us really know well enough, and it almost makes them kind of like sad.
And I sort of feel the same way, yeah. And this is, yeah, and not even, it's not so much sad, but like there are other emotions there that it's like I hear people say all the time, like, oh, just like so chill, just gonna like put it on, all this sort of thing. But for me, I think when I'm listening to this stuff, it's just, yeah, it's more like you know that you know it. You can picture where you are. You can picture the feeling and the time period, but you can't access the memory that you're trying to get when you're being like inspired to remember. And that is like, can be like frustrating or sad, or that's the feeling of nostalgia, I guess. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's like a few years ago, or this, I guess, a long time ago before, but do you know that band, or I think it's just a guy, the Caretaker?
Yeah.
So there was an album, I've only listened to the one, but I think it's an Empty Bliss Beyond This World that came out like the beginning of this time I was doing this sort of stuff. And like that record for me was sort of the same way, where it's like there's not beats, there's not anything happening on there. It's just like a really crummy looping of several of these old songs, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like eerie and kind of scary and a little bit sad, and also like so beautiful and happy. And that's like my music going a totally other way, using the same sort of techniques. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Dude, I'm like thrilled that you brought that up, because my buddy shared that album to me like 3 weeks ago. I didn't listen to, because it's like a six piece, and it's all about like the journey of dementia. And listening to just the parts that I did, I was like, this kind of reminds me of Monster Rally in a way, because it's like,
yeah, it's like a
this
tragic
hazy
Monster
vision.
Rally.
Yeah, it's like a hazy vision of a time that you never knew, but based on his project and the story he's telling, it's like somebody might be recalling this in their head, and then as you go on, it's just like, because there's like a 6-hour video on YouTube of it or whatever, and it's like if you click through it, it's just like dark and kind of scary.
Yeah, and I remember like listening to that one, and I had read that it was like a whole concept album based on like the ballroom scene of The Shining, you know, that's like what it sounds like anyway. And but yeah, I used to listen to that. Like I remember I was taking a ceramic class, and I used to just put on my headphones and do like the ceramic wheel and listen to that for like an hour straight. I never even like made anything. I just like sat there and zoned out.
Yeah, just spinning the wheel.
But yeah, it's great. But yeah, so I think that the kind of just the subtle tones of the instrumental and the looping and the vinyl and the like glitches, not even glitches, but just like the cracks in the vinyl or whatever, like it, I don't know. It's so cinematic in your mind that it can be frustrating if you're not just feeling okay about it.
Right. Yeah. And there's so much to pick apart.
Yeah. And everybody hears it differently. That's the cool part, you know, is that because it plays so much on your own emotions, that it's a different experience for everybody.
Absolutely. And I think that you don't get that out of, obviously music filled with lyrics is great, but it's often conveying and telling you how to feel. But
right,
when it comes to instrumental music, it's like you can take away something different depending on who you are.
Yeah, which is also why some like music in different languages can have the same effect, because if I can't understand, then the voice is just playing to the rest of the stuff, and so it's like then you're also painting your own picture.
Absolutely. I listen to a lot of foreign music. My house does, because I just play it on speakers, and my wife and I, we love bossa nova and like French music and all that, and it's just like all you can take away is the tone if you don't understand what they're saying.
Yeah, and that's a cool thing about it. It's also like you are missing something because you can't hear it, but also it certainly doesn't affect your enjoyment.
Absolutely, and I think that's why we always return to that. And changing the subject, where does the name Monster Rally come from?
It's actually from a book back maybe probably like 12 years ago, I had found a book in my house that was called Monster Alley. And I think it was maybe my mom's or something from when she was younger. And it's a book of illustrations by this dude, Chaz Adams, who is the founder of the Addams Family.
Oh.
So they're all like, kind of like semi-morbid, kind of funny, like one-panel cartoons.
Okay. I think I've seen that book when looking up your name before.
Yeah, like if you Google search it, you'll probably just find the cover. And I saw the cover, I was like, that's awesome. Like the name doesn't actually really reflect the music very well, but I had the name before I had any of the music, because I saw that book and I was like, oh, I love that name. That's got to be like the band name of my next project.
Yeah. So the book then, Monster Alley, is that like, it's just artwork or is it comic?
I think they're comics, yeah. So it's like just like simple one page comics with, they have like a little quotation underneath.
Oh, okay. Really cool. And that's probably not something that's been reprinted or
I can't imagine. I have the same copy that I had 12 years ago, and it's like this moldy old copy, but I have it in my studio.
Oh, that's really cool.
I think the graphic on the front is really cool.
Interesting origin story. And what about your other alias, Shah Marg?
Yeah, so this one's also related to my mom, which is kind of funny. But so my mom is part of a meditation group. Has been a part of this group for a long, long time, and it's called Shah Marg. And when I started this band, the side project, I had thought I was naming it after it, but I just messed it up because I thought it was Shah Marg. So anyway, that's how it wound up being Shah Marg.
That's really cool too. You have your mom to thank for both.
I do. I got her to thank for a lot of things.
Yeah. Your band in high school, you were in a few bands, it sounds like, or middle school through high school.
Yeah, I was in a few bands, but the one that took me through most of high school and then like the beginning of what would have been college had I not been in the band was called Driver's Side Impact. And we were like a screamo, sort of emo band on Victory Records. I don't know if you know Victory. If you're ever into any of those bands, like Thursday or Taking Back Sunday, they were all on this record label called Victory Records, which was like the pinnacle of greatness of that kind of music. And so that was a huge deal for us. Yeah, it was awesome. I mean, weird, great, awful, awesome experience, you know?
What did you play or sing?
I played bass. No, I was like very much in the back of the band. However, I did like sort of manage everything, and I made all the artwork, and I was like the only one who drove the band at that time. Like I didn't drink or smoke weed or anything. I was like the most level-headed of the group. So, it's always you see that happening. It's just like the bass player or the drummer or something is in the back, and like nobody's screaming when they get there on stage or something, but they're the one holding everything together.
Yeah, right. And what does the timeline look for that? Like what years?
I think that was probably like, it's hard to say. So I think that was probably like 2004 to 4 or 5 at its origin. And then I left in 2008 and they left, they played for like 2 or so years after me. And I left in 2008 and came home to Cleveland for a while before going to school in Chicago for a year. And that's where I started making all the Monster Alley stuff. And then I moved to Columbus right after that in 2009. And that's when I actually started making Monster Alley. But I think sort of what I was doing with this project was like a complete bounce off of what I had been doing with that one. It's just like, I just want to be like an anonymous person. There's going to be no singing. The music's going to be a totally different vibe. I want to have like 100% control of everything. And that's basically what happened. Now it seems like hard to go back. I've had a couple projects working with other people and it's always been good, but being in a band with other people, like it's just too hard.
Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, I was in a band in high school and it was fun and we had a good time doing it, but it's definitely hard, especially when you all start to go your own ways.
Exactly. And then like, your taste may change a bit. You want to try different stuff, but other people don't feel that way. Or they feel like this isn't what the band is. You know what I mean?
Right. So where does that put Driver's Side Impact now that the glue is gone?
I don't know what happened. I think, So there was 6 of us, and me and my buddy, my one of my best friends still, and I've known him my whole life. He was in the band with me. He left the band like 6 months before I did, and that was like pretty crushing for me because the problem is once you start going on tour with people, and you're in that scenario, it's just like frustrating dealing with people who you may have been close with otherwise. And then you wind up like seeing sides of them that maybe you like lose a bit of respect, or I don't know. It's close quarters for anybody. It would drive you crazy.
Right.
So after my buddy left, 6 months later, I left that band. Then I think like another 6 months later, 2 of the other guys left it. And then there was like, by the end of the line, there was just 2 of the dudes from the original band that swapped out a handful of other people. And I think they released another album, but then they stopped. Like we did well, and we toured a lot, and we had like some really good shows. And we did a full length when I was in the band. They did another full length after, I think. So like all around pretty successful. We never like really broke through enough, like there's the whole emo resurgence of all that stuff now, and people getting like so psyched. It's not going to happen for Driver's Side Impact because we never had enough of it.
Yeah.
Which is too bad because some of those people, I mean, maybe not now, but some of those people are doing like crazy reunion tours.
Yeah, absolutely. It was big when through my middle school and high school time. So yeah, it was really big.
How old are you?
I am 27.
27, yeah. So I'm 32, so I'm a little bit older, which makes me surprised that it was as big of a thing for you. But actually, it still never went away. Like
No.
people still in high school, like there's just something of that period of time and that like level of angst that everybody feels that lends itself to certain kinds of music. And so whether it's like emo or screamo or metal or just like various hardcore music or just like moody indie music, there's always like that audience for it. So I think, I don't know, like back when I was in LA, there are these dudes who do an emo night. They're like the official emo night. And like every Tuesday, the first Tuesday of every month or whatever, they have just like the Echoplex sold out, line around the corner, and they get all the like people from the bands to come in and DJ and stuff. And like those nights are super fun.
It's it brings you back, right? So it's like
it does. It takes you right back there. And the fact that you're there with everybody else who also remembers all of that and they know all the words to the songs, and I don't know. It's a special time.
Yeah.
It's like the modern day 80s night. Everybody used to have like 80s night, and you'd be like, 80s, I was born in the 80s.
Yeah.
Not you, but I was.
Yeah.
and then it's just like now it's like that's like emo night. But I guess now they have like 90s night, and you're like, wait a minute, it's too soon.
Yeah, I know. That's something that came about that's like, oh, it's just going to be 80s in the grocery stores all the time, but eventually it's going to be 90s.
No, it's going to, yeah. I mean, eventually they're going to be playing like, I don't know, Beyonce in the grocery store, and we're going to be older, and our kids are going to be like, turn this off. And be like, this is Beyonce. She's so cool.
Yeah, you watch your mouth.
Yeah, don't you badmouth Beyonce.
When it comes to actually going through an album, a song, like when you complete a song or an album, like what does that feel like? Like a lot of artists obviously struggle with, ever really feeling like something's complete, but at the end of the day, you have to slap it at some point and say, this is done. Like when you hit that moment, what does that feel like for you?
I think that like there's some stuff and I've made it at the time, I've thought this isn't done, and then I come back when I'm putting together the record and thinking about how things might go together and put it in, and I think like now it's done. So I think sometimes the placement of a song in a surrounding of other songs might help you understand that it's done, and other times some things do just take more work. I'm definitely not the one who's going to spend so much time on something. Like if I've already spent too much time on a song, I know that I'm probably doing too much. I don't know. It's hard to explain like when you know something's done or how it feels when it's finished. I think like when I listen to a section of songs for a record or like a whole record or half of a record or something, and you see the beginning and the middle of your story, and your ending and like everything happening in your own mind, or at least for me anyway. When it all pieces together, that's how I know that it's done. And sometimes you'll listen to a section of 20 minutes, half of a record or something, and I'll think like, all right, so that story was making sense, and then like something happened and it didn't work at all. It's like you're watching a movie from the 70s or something, and then like 3/4 of the way through, all of a sudden there's just like a CGI dinosaur for 5 minutes, and then it's back to this film, you know.
Yeah.
Like sometimes it's as obvious as that in your album that like that was wrong, you know.
Yeah. But I mean, a lot of those kind of movies, they become like cult classics because of that element.
Right. Yeah, well, I think like that, and that could be fine, and sometimes that happens. But at least for me, I think, you know, like it has to flow, and not to not have surprises, I guess, not necessarily, but just, you know, I'm always thinking about a story sort of for the whole album, and it has to make sense in everything. And when I feel like I've experienced the whole story or like watched a movie in my own mind, then I know that it's done.
Where has your music brought you in the world, touring?
Only in the U.S., which is kind of funny. I get a lot of people requesting that I come to various locations in Europe, but I haven't ever gone there to play music, which is kind of funny. I think that it's just expensive to try to book people. And since I don't go out for that long, it doesn't do that much. But I'll say that it's taken me in so much, not in the places, like definitely, I mean, I toured way more back in after high school before I started Monsterelli in my old band. I've probably been to every state playing music, but Monsterelli mostly sort of is sectioned out by the main markets because I don't play that many shows. So the only ones I do are the places where the most people are. So it's like a lot of Brooklyn, a lot of California. So, you know, LA, San Francisco, and that. I've been to like Austin quite a bit, Denver, just a handful of other places, but it's not so many. I think the bigger thing than the locations is the stuff I've done that has been cool because of it. Like the last year I did an art show and performance at Shepherd Ferry's Gallery in LA, and that was like one of the coolest projects I've ever done. And that was more of just like an all-encompassing art music party kind of thing. Like I'd like to do every show like that, you know. But I've also done like, you know, played shows with a lot of people who I was like thrilled to be there with, you know. And even a bunch of stuff like I've been to South by Southwest a few times, which I think is usually kind of a mess, but a handful of those like experiences were fun. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tricky. Like, I'd like to go a lot more places. People hit me up all the time about, like I was saying, Europe, or like some people wanted me to come to Mexico City or Brazil. I'm like, I'd love to do all that stuff, but I just don't have I don't think I have the listener base to support a show big enough to pay me to do it. But if I were going, then I would certainly try to do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, I mean, I'm eager to go really all these sort of places, but I only ever really go out for like 3 or 4 days at a time, and then I come home. Nice. So it's nice. I mean, I like to do that because I hate to be away from my family.
Yeah.
So it's hard to say, but that is like a bit of a hindrance on any kind of touring.
Yeah, I mean, you got some artists that thrive in the smaller show environment, shorter tours, and some that thrive in the always on the road environment and bigger tours.
Right. Because you have to, really. The problem is, like, I'm lucky enough that I'm doing work for myself independently of Monsterelli that's still, like, on the creative end of what I'm doing, that I'm not forced to. Because if I could, I think I probably could get away with just being Monsterelli and touring a bunch and making enough of a living. But then I just have to be gone all the time, you know? So it's, I don't know. And I don't think I would do it. I certainly would be forced to stop because of how much I would not like it.
And how has the pandemic been impacting you, not even just touring, but like otherwise influencing your productivity and creativity?
It's a weird one. I mean, I think it's like very much positive and negative. Like you think like, oh, you have to, like, you can't really go to do anything, and so you should have more time to do stuff. But the problem is that maybe your vibes are so bad that the stuff you're making is not good.
Yeah.
You know, not that I think that my vibes are pretty high. The vibes in the house and all that. I think that we're all like pretty positive. We're good. But The problem is like just the everyday of modern life is so exhausting. Then when you have your like of the external world, and then when you come into your own interior, sometimes you just want to do nothing, you know?
Yeah.
But that said, you can only do so much of that too. So I think what it has done, and what I think it's done for a lot of people, is like you've gotten your house in order a little bit. So like, you know, you've done some organization, you've planned some stuff or whatever. So I've done that, but a little bit in my music. And so I've set myself up better ways to just be able to like step into my studio and work, you know? And so I've had more time, I've produced more stuff, but like 6 months ago, or it wasn't quite 6 months ago, but about, I remember just being like, I'm going to have like 8 albums by the summer, you know? And, but I certainly don't. So it's a weird one, but I have produced like a lot of great artwork. I think that's been a better one for me than music. And, but I have some gems too in the music. So I think, I don't know, I really can't complain. Like we've been healthy, we've been happy. I like to spend time with my family. Like we've been good with each other in close quarters, and I've been producing some music, although not as much as I would have expected. It's basically the summary.
Yeah,
absolutely. I'm basically just thankful that I'm not more reliant on my live stuff, because like I had shows booked for April that obviously didn't happen. I had shows rebooked for September, which are definitely not going to happen. And so now we're talking about shows in next spring, which, I mean, is still questionable. You know what I mean? Like 5 months ago, if you had said I couldn't play a show in September, I would think that was insane. But now it seems like if I play a show next September, I'll be happy. So it's hard to say. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
I haven't been anywhere this year, actually. I mean, really, at my height, I'll play like 10 or 15 shows a year, so it's not like that much. But I was in San Francisco in December, and then I had shows booked in April, I'm pretty sure. But that's been it. And it's really a bummer, actually, because like 2 years ago, I started working with a very good booking agent, which I'm just thrilled about. Like, she's the best, and she works with so many great people and has helped me so much. And now I can't play any shows.
Yeah.
So
well, you still got her, right?
I still got her.
Comes back
and honestly,
normal.
I've talked to her, and I was just like, your job is much harder. You know, like at least I'm over here, like I'm bummed out. I get to just be casually bummed that I'm not playing shows. Meanwhile, like I can't imagine being a booking agent right now. You know, and like her agency they do like everybody. You know what I mean? They book like huge people to small people and all this stuff, and like everything is canceled.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of adapting being done in that with the live streams and the couch concerts, but
yeah, and I think obviously like people will get back to playing live music. I mean, ever since people were playing instruments, there have been people watching them. Like whenever that happens, that will happen. But in the meantime, and probably for a lot of stuff forever, some culture will change and be added to have some version of like normal streaming or remote or like higher end productions. Like maybe bands, they won't do quite as much live stuff, but it'll be more of a thing to put together like an incredible digital experience or something that goes out to people that they have to pay for. I don't really know what it'll be, but I think we'll see. It's early on, but you'll see more of that stuff. Because even after it's okay to go back to doing things, or even when people think it's okay or years down the line or whatever, no one's going to forget this, you know? So like everybody will, I don't know, there will be innovations, and people might wonder like, why aren't they here yet? It's just because it's too early. That stuff takes time.
What does success look like to you?
It's a good question. I think I'd consider what I'm doing to be success. I think I get to make albums that some people listen to, and I get to play shows that some people come to and they're happy. And basically every day I get to choose what kinds of things I want to create, and having that freedom is really the most important thing. You know, I don't need to be headlining Coachella or something like that. You know, I just want to be able to, the fact that I'm still 10 years in making records for a larger audience than in a year before that, is that I can't ask for more than that.
Yeah. Continuing to grow. Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's a funny thing, like I said earlier on, that I never. It's ironic because I said I'd never make Monster Alley my job or put that on it, but really everything I have is from it. You know, I just try not to remind myself of that.
Yeah. And what kind of advice would you have for creators that are either early or late into their career?
I would just say don't overthink it. You know, just it's better to share your work with people than to wait until it's perfect, because it really won't ever be, and then nobody will ever see it. So if you're somebody who makes things, you didn't probably just make them for yourself, and chances are that other people would love to see them or hear them or whatever. And so just share what you can. Don't overthink it.
That's great advice. A lot of people sit on their projects and never comes to fruition.
I understand. You know, you're afraid to share something, or like no one will ever be as critical of you as you are of yourself. You'll also be more forgiving. You know, you're not the person on YouTube telling you should delete your profile or whatever. But also, so tell that person to point you in the direction of their awesome record. You know what I mean? Because it probably doesn't exist. So it's better just to have. It's better to have something than nothing.
And on that note, where can people find you? Where do you want people to seek you out?
That's a good question. Really, it all depends on your preferences. Spotify is always good. Just Monster Alley on Spotify. Bandcamp is also good. If you like to go the Bandcamp route, you can download all my stuff for free. Just monsteralley.bandcamp.com. And then to stay really up to date with anything I'm doing, it's my Instagram is probably going to be the best one, and it's just my Instagram name is Ted Feighan, so TEDFEIGHAN. But if you search Monster Alley, you'll find it.
Okay, great. Is there anything else you wanted to say before we depart?
I don't think so. Thanks for taking the time, wanting to talk to me.
Great, yeah. Thanks for coming on. It's nothing but a pleasure, and I think there's a lot of great takeaways for anyone listening.
Yeah, I hope so. Thank you.
Yeah, you have a good night. And that is it for our episode featuring Ted Feighan, otherwise known as Monster Alley, also known as Shah Marg. If you couldn't tell, I was pretty nervous to be having what turned out to be a rather casual conversation with an artist and musician that I've been a huge fan of for a little over a year now. I hope to bring him on here again sometime in the future for an update on where he's going. His 2-vinyl compilation, Castaways Volume 1, has already sold out, but it is a mashup of some of his greatest singles, LPs, and unreleased tracks, as well as his new single, Green Magic. I'm serious when I say that this is a vinyl that I could slice up and throw into my fruit salad tonight. It's just so damn juicy. Our next episode is going to be featuring a horror author who has released his debut in October of 2019 and is set to release his next novel in October of 2020. He's a man hard at work, keeping himself accountable and on schedule for his releases. That is Joseph Hood, who has an excellent relationship with his characters, regardless of how much he punishes them, and has great insight on how to remain productive in a world encumbered by a pandemic. Keep an eye out for that and more from None the Lesser. I'm Cody Buchanan. See you next time.